Discover how a surprising new maid transformatively helped a billionaire's son pass 12 math tests. The weight of impending doom loomed over Ethan like a storm cloud ready to break. His father's voice echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the binary strip of existence he now hovered over: success or failure. He was flunking math, and if he didn't turn things around, the 12 tests ahead of him would decimate his future, sever his ties to the gilded life he had led. How could he face his last year of high school only to watch his father's legacy slip away because of his own inadequacies? For a fleeting moment, he longed to escape the pressure, but that yearning was drowned out by memories of luxury cars and private schools, the entangled wires of privilege that shaped his identity. Rosa, the new maid, stepped into his life with an unusual determination. She hailed from a world where every dollar was hard-earned. Her hands were calloused, and her eyes sparkled with focused ambition. The stark contrast between them was jarring. While Ethan had the plushest cushions of wealth at his command, Rosa faced daily battles to carve a path for herself. When she offered to help with math, he scoffed. The arrogance of privilege blinded him to the goldmine of potential hidden in her offer. He pictured his friends' expressions if they saw him, a billionaire's son, learning from someone from the help. Would they think he had lost his edge? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the days passed, the refusal to accept help morphed into desperation. Anxiety mingled with shame as he found himself sinking deeper into his academic abyss. Each missed assignment amplified the voices in his head, creating a cacophony of insecurity. There was no choice left. He agreed to meet her, driven by a mix of dread and uncertainty. What started as reluctant sessions with crumpled numbers and confusing equations gradually unveiled layers of understanding. Late nights became a sanctuary, where academic struggles turned into conversations filled with aspirations, insecurities, and the stark realities of their lives. Ethan discovered vulnerability, a foreign but tantalizing feeling he never knew existed. Yet, with each breakthrough came the harsh social repercussions from his elite circle, whose judgment felt like icy daggers piercing through his resolve. "You're associating with the help?" they would sneer, and every sneer twisted his gut with anguish. Did their opinions matter more than his own sense of belonging? The confrontation with his father loomed over him like a tidal wave as he resisted the urge to cut ties with Rosa, a choice that would mean choosing a life defined by others over one rooted in authenticity. Torn, he faced a raw moment of truth that threatened to unravel everything. Time was slipping away, and the weight of the impending tests transformed from a mere academic concern to a defining moment clashing with his values. Could he find the courage to redefine success? In that harrowing silence, Ethan gripped the edge of his desk, heart racing, mind swirling, knowing the future hung precariously in the balance. Would he muster the strength to protect what truly mattered, or would he collapse under the suffocating expectations of privilege? His internal struggle had reached an unbearable climax, and the stakes loomed larger than life itself. Ethan's resolve wavered as the hours evaporated, each tick of the clock mocking him with reminders of his imminent deadline. The tests loomed, 12 formidable gates that would either pave a path to his future or close it off definitively. Rosa had not only become his tutor, she represented something profoundly different, a bridge to possibilities he had never dared to explore. When they met for their next study session, her demeanor was a refreshing contrast to the escalating dread consuming him. She radiated a calm focus, deconstructing complex math problems as if they were mere puzzles waiting to be solved. It was in those moments that Ethan felt a flicker of hope spark within him, a faint light in the dense fog of failure. "Why do you care so much?" he found himself asking one evening, the question laced with impatience. "You have your own life to worry about." Rosa paused, her pencil hovering over the paper. "Because, Ethan, I see potential in you. You might think this is just about numbers, but it's about something much bigger," she replied, her eyes conveying an insight he had never considered. "For people like us, every opportunity counts. It's about breaking out of the circumstances we were born into." Her words hung heavily in the air. He had often viewed his wealth as a shield, an unyielding armor that protected him from the struggles that accompanied life for many. Yet here was someone choosing to invest time in him despite the chasm that separated their worlds. It ignited something in Ethan, a realization that comfort did not equate to fulfillment. In the following days, he began to confront his dilemmas more openly. The feeling of dread transformed slowly into determination. As he pored over formulas and theorems, his mind began to slowly untangle the panic that had clung to him for so long. Yet, despite the intellectual growth, there were keen reminders of the socio-psychological barriers he faced. The ridicule of his peers echoed in his mind as he spotted a few of them at the corner coffee shop. They laughed, pointed in his direction, whispering loud enough for him to hear.
"What's Ethan doing with a maid, anyway?" The sneers dug under his skin, but a part of him stood firm. Did he need their approval, or was it time to redefine how he measured his worth? With a deep breath, he turned away, refusing to allow their insults to dictate his decisions. He targeted his focus on Rosa. Her unwavering support reminded him of what really mattered, the strength of character, not the glitter of wealth. After their late-night sessions, he began to keep a journal, documenting not just his mathematical challenges, but the emotional landmarks he was navigating. The feelings of inadequacy morphed into reflections of resilience. As the day of the first test drew nearer, the pressure mounted again. Ethan could feel his heart racing, the haunting shadow of failure creeping close. It was one thing to practice, and quite another to face the reality of the tests. With each math problem he completed, he questioned the implications of what success or failure would mean. Was he approaching this academically, or was he on the precipice of something much more profound about himself? The night before the first test, he arranged his study materials, but he couldn't shake the sense of urgency bubbling beneath his skin. Gripped by conflict, he felt himself explode into action. He needed to tell Rosa about his anxiety and share his growing inner turmoil. But what if revealing that made him seem weak? A crucial choice loomed. Would he keep this burden to himself, or would he risk vulnerability, a quality he had been gradually learning to embrace? In the silence of his room, he found himself on the edge of a breakthrough. The pressure, the tests, the privilege, it was all coalescing into a singular moment of truth. The time had come to face more than just his academic issues. He had to confront the fear of losing himself to the expectations of a world he was desperate to escape. In that tension, Ethan realized that success in math could only lead him to truly understand success in life. As he prepared to reach out to Rosa, a shadow crossed his mind. What if her teachings extended beyond math? What if she held the key to a transformation he never envisioned? But before he could process that thought fully, his phone buzzed. A text from his father, demanding to know why Ethan hadn't checked in. The weights of duty and expectation pressed down once more, and he froze. Would he respond dutifully as the billionaire's son, or would he seize this moment for himself and redefine everything? Ethan slumped back against his desk, exhaling sharply as he glanced at his phone. The weight of his father's text loomed large over him, a reminder of the reality he both resented and relied on. It was easier to be the dutiful son, to play the part expected of him. Yet, as the tests approached, a deeper discomfort churned in his gut, a dissonance between who he was and who he was meant to be. He contemplated his father's demand for a response, but was suddenly struck by a different realization. Replying out of obligation could anchor him back to that familiar path of compliance, one that felt increasingly stifling. Instead of succumbing to family expectations, what if he used this moment to carve out the identity he truly wanted? Ethan's mind shifted to Rosa. The way she dismantled those complex math problems, how she saw potential he often overlooked, made him curious about what it would feel like to actually voice his struggles and admit his fears. Her ambition was tangible, a force that found a way through his protective barriers. The thought of reaching out felt like a small revolution, a rebellion against the reluctance that had shackled him for too long. What if I just send her a message, he pondered, wrestling with anticipation. He finally opened his messaging app, fingers hovering over the screen as succumbing doubt crept in. What would he say? Would her support still hold if he displayed his insecurity? Summoning courage, he typed out the words, "Can we meet? I need to talk." Even as he hit send, a pang of self-doubt gripped him. Had he foolishly assumed she would want to deal with his emotional upheaval alongside his academic concerns? And yet, this was his moment, a chance to step towards vulnerability. Each second felt like an eternity until his phone buzzed back. Of course, how about later tonight? The response ignited a warmth in his chest, the kind he hadn't anticipated. "Yes, I'll be there," he replied, feeling a new determination pulse through him. Understanding dawned. Confronting his fears did not equate to weakness. Instead, it reflected a growing strength. At the coffee shop that evening, the familiar aroma of espresso wrapped around him in a fragrant embrace. Rosa sat at their usual corner table, her bright smile cutting through the growing tempest inside him. A part of him wanted to slip back into the comfort of casual banter, to hide behind the mask of composure. But as he settled into the seat opposite her, he knew that the encounter demanded honesty. "Rosa," he began, voice slightly shaky, "I've been feeling overwhelmed. These tests, they terrify me." The words came spilling out, tinged with a rawness he hadn't expected to feel. Her expression softened. "I wanted to talk about that too. It's okay to feel anxious." The door to their conversation opened wider. Ethan clung to her empathy, realizing he was ready to confront not just the math, but the shrouded complexities of expectations, identity, and vulnerability. Every question he had, every doubt he wrestled with, felt less daunting under the weight of her unwavering gaze. During the discussion, Ethan located two pillars steadied within him: resilience and the profound comfort of being seen. They dissected his anxiety around the tests, revealing strategies, but each solution led back to a much deeper issue. The tests had become a mirror reflecting not just knowledge of numbers, but who Ethan was on the brink of becoming. As the hours slipped by, their dialogue drifted into personal territory. Rosa shared her own experiences with the weight of others' expectations dampening her aspirations. For the first time, Ethan saw not just a tutor, but a fellow traveler navigating similar struggles, one who fought against the tides of external judgment. If he harnessed the strength she inspired, he could perhaps transform anxiety into ambition. The moment felt pivotal, yet shrouded in uncertainty about his true potential. Was he ready to redefine his identity beyond wealth and expectations? What if he unlocked capabilities he never knew resided within him? Rosa leaned in slightly, eyes bright with encouragement. "You possess more than you know, Ethan. Allow yourself the possibility of success." As the conversation deepened, Ethan's heart raced at the thought. What if this relationship with Rosa was not confined to mere tutoring, but a catalyst for an entirely new identity? The night darkened outside, and he could feel the threads of his old life unraveling, making way for something uncharted and exhilarating.
The sense of clarity began to crystallize, yet before he could explore it further, a notification chimed insistently from the corner of his phone. Distracted, he peered at the message and a chill swept over him. It was a barrage of criticisms from a group chat, his peers mocking his efforts, branding him weak for seeking help. The sting cut deep, but Ethan felt a fire igniting. He had choices to make, paths to tread, and a battle to conquer within himself. The question loomed larger than ever. Would he fold under the pressure of expectation, or rise, defining success on his own terms? As he looked back at Rosa, determination resonated within him. The time for deep personal exploration was now unfurling before him. What awaited him in the next chapters of his journey? Would he finally confront his critics and emerge stronger, or would he wallow in the shadows of their doubt? Ethan's thoughts whirled as the harsh words from the group chat echoed in his mind. Each jeer struck him like a physical blow, stirring an internal storm. He felt boxed in, suffocating under the weight of his peers' judgment, and yet something essential flickered within him. A spark ignited not by their mockery, but by Rosa's unwavering belief in his potential. In the coffee shop, surrounded by the comforting clinks of cups and soft hum of conversation, Ethan concluded that he had two choices. He could shrink back into his shell, allowing their voices to dictate his worth, or he could build on the resonance of Rosa's words, transforming potential into a reality. Each option proceeded with its own set of consequences, and neither felt easy. How do I combat their words? The thought felt urgent. It propelled him to dive deeper into the conversation with Rosa. He needed to extract more than just comfort. He craved strategies, ways to harness his vulnerability into opportunity. A tool for success rather than a sign of weakness. "Rosa," he said, urgency threading through his voice, "how did you learn to handle the pressure around expectations? I mean, they think I'm weak for asking for help, but I feel like I'm trying to be strong by reaching out to you." An understanding flickered in her eyes, as if she had expected him to confront this head-on. "You are powerful for facing your feelings, Ethan. It's a misunderstood strength. In fact, I often remind myself that critics will criticize, no matter what form of success I choose. What matters is how we choose to define ourselves." Her words settled over him, softening the edges of his anxiety. What if I turned that criticism into motivation? Every time I feel overwhelmed, I could breathe in strength instead. He pondered, imagining a version of himself who used every jab as fuel to push harder, confront the discomfort, and transform it. "Let's take this head on," she urged gently. "Prepare yourself for the tests, yes, but also prepare mentally for what others might say. You need to create a shield of self-worth that protects you from their influences." Ethan was intrigued by the idea of self-worth as armor. Together, they brainstormed tactics, from creating affirmations that asserted his strengths to visualizing success during exams. Illustrating scenarios where he stood firm against peer criticism began building the mental framework he needed to reinforce his identity. "Rosa, would you be willing to push through this alongside me?" The question spilled out, heavy with significance. "I want to prove to myself and to them that their labels don't define me." "Absolutely," she replied with a determined nod. "But remember, it's a journey. Embrace the moments when you stumble, and don't shy away from the struggles. They shape who you will become." Hours melded into an infectious energy as they plotted study rhythms. The tension from earlier dissipated, giving way to excitement. Ethan mapped out a strategy to approach each test methodically. The prospect of conquering the subjects appeared less daunting when framed as a challenge rather than a burden. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was an acknowledgement of the shadows still tethered to him: disbelief from peers, the expectations of his father, the fear of disappointing others. Leaving the coffee shop, the night air enveloped him, each step igniting a newfound resilience. Torn between worlds, he still felt the tug of family expectations and societal pressures. But now he had Rosa to lean on, a quiet, persistent solidarity that fortified him. The next day at school, however, the echoes of his phone seemed louder than ever. Unable to avoid the group chat, he dived into the messages. But instead of trepidation, he felt resolve building. The same words that once stung now fueled his fire. "Game on," he whispered to himself. He understood then that this was not just about the tests he faced. It was the initiation of a much larger conflict within his own identity. How would he combat the critics? How would he intertwine his journey with an unwavering sense of self-respect? The realization washed over him. This was his crusade, and the culmination wouldn't lie in mere academic success, but in redefining the disparate pieces of himself. He was ready to resist passivity, to confront direct challenges with insights gained from late-night discussions and unexpected inspiration. With renewed determination, he glanced at his phone again, shifting from self-reflection to action. He drafted another message, not to those who criticized him, but to a few friends he knew truly supported him. A reminder that he was not alone as he forged this path. But just as he was about to hit send, another notification pinged. It was from an unexpected source, a peer he rarely interacted with, and the preview left him unsettled. "My dad says you should just quit if you can't handle the pressure." Ethan felt his heart race, but this time he faced the onslaught of emotions armed with resilience. The moment had come to face not only the skepticism of others, but also the parts of himself that had doubted. What would he choose in that instant? Would he lash back, or find a way to redirect the confrontation into something productive? He took a breath. Just as Rosa had taught him, confronting the pressure, whether external or internal, would be the real test of his character. The choice was his, and the stakes had never been higher. Ethan's fingers hovered over the screen, wrestling with the urge to respond. The comments stung, but beneath the sting was a wellspring of clarity. He could retaliate with biting words, or he could use this moment as a crucible for his growth, an opportunity to redefine his narrative. Steeling himself, he chose the latter. Instead of firing back, he crafted a response that reflected his dawning sense of clarity. "Thanks for the advice, but I'm determined to keep pushing forward." With a firm press, he hit send and felt a surge of empowerment wash over him. The dialogue shifted from defending himself to asserting his intentions. In class that day, however, the atmosphere felt charged. Every glance from his classmates seemed amplified. He could almost hear their internal monologue scrutinizing his resolve. Nevertheless, as he absorbed the lessons, fragments of their judgments transformed into stepping stones. When the teacher posed a challenging equation, Ethan found himself primed, not overwhelmed. Each number and variable danced in his mind like puzzle pieces, mocking his previous self-doubt. He immersed himself in the challenge, fueled by the thought that he had come too far to let anyone dictate his worth. After class, he shared his enthusiasm with Rosa, who had become a beacon of support as he traversed this journey. "I tackled that equation like a pro. I finally felt like I could think without the noise of their judgments drowning me." Her eyes sparkled with pride. "You're making progress. It's about retraining your mind to think of obstacles as opportunities to prove to tell yourself just how capable you are." Inspired, he dove deeper into study. Days turned into weeks of meticulous preparation. Each night, he set aside time to not only review content, but to reinforce the affirmations they had crafted together. They became his new mantra, fortifying his belief in himself. "I am capable. I am resilient. I will not let fear dictate my journey." But the test looming ahead was not solely academic. As the exam week approached, the anxiety re-emerged. "God, why am I feeling this way? I've been preparing. I shouldn't feel like this," he thought, grappling with the disquietude. It suddenly struck him. Preparation was not merely about the facts. His mind wrestled with the emotional weight he still carried. The mockery, the expectations, those shadows lingered, threatening to shroud his hard-fought confidence. He reached out to Rosa that evening, emotionally drained as he unpacked his anxiety.
What do I do if everything I've built starts to crumble again? I don't want to face that pressure, especially alone. Rosa's response was measured but deliberate. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Recognizing that is a part of processing pressure. Instead of viewing it as a weakness, see it as a reminder of your humanity. Prepare to embrace discomfort. It won't break you. Her words ignited a flicker of recognition within him. She was right. He had to be brave enough to expose his vulnerabilities, but equally committed to confronting them head-on. He began drafting a plan, visualizing scenarios where he succeeded in the exams, and navigating critical interactions with classmates. The following day, he noticed a distinct shift in his mindset. Engaging in conversations felt lighter, more authentic. He even struck up a chat with a classmate who had been part of the critical group. "I've been working on my confidence. How about we form a study group for these tests? I think we can help each other." "Really? Sounds good," the peer replied, surprisingly receptive. Ethan felt a rush of exhilaration. This was more than just tackling equations. It was about building bridges instead of walls. He was weaving new connections, fostering an environment for mutual growth that transcended the expectations once imposed on him. But as the tests approached, a gnawing uncertainty resurfaced, compounded by the weight of that previous message. Could I really push through this? Did I risk too much? The pressure felt like a looming shadow. Was it possible to stand confidently against it without fracturing? The test day arrived. As he stood before the exam room, the cacophony of doubts resurfaced. He closed his eyes. It was time to confront the voice inside. "I deserve this space. I've worked hard." With determination coursing through him, he opened his eyes to find Rosa in the hallway, offering a supportive nod. He felt fortified by her presence, an ally amidst the swirling chaos. As the door opened, he stepped inside, ready to face not just the questions on the paper, but the deeper battle within. What would he discover about his true aptitude during those crucial moments? The outcome of the tests seemed secondary to the transformation that lay ahead, waiting for him to claim it. As the exam began, Ethan's focus narrowed to the first question, his heart pounding with both trepidation and resolve. The words on the paper blurred momentarily, but he drew a deep breath and let the stillness envelop him. Each problem he solved marked not just an academic achievement, it was a mark of the courage that had begun to define him. The doubts that whispered in the background still lingered, yet they seemed less potent, filtered through the new narrative he had started to construct. In the chaos of numbers and symbols, Ethan found his rhythm. He navigated one problem after another, channeling the support Rosa had given him. It was as if her encouragement flowed through his pen, offering clarity when frustration threatened to seep in. Each solved equation felt like scaling a hill he had once believed too steep, reaffirming his conviction that he was capable. But halfway through the exam, he stumbled upon a particularly tricky question, one that needed sharp analytical thinking and a swift decision. Panic flared, and he could almost hear the familiar echoes of discouragement from those classmates who had doubted him. They crept back in like unwanted guests, but this time Ethan anchored himself. The power behind his transformation rested within the acceptance of his own limitations, the acknowledgement that vulnerable moments could coexist with strength. "Keep going," he thought, rationalizing the pressure. "I can't let fear drive me." Inspired, he opened his mind to each possible pathway rather than constrict it with anxiety. After a few moments of contemplation, the solution unfurled in his mind like a roadmap shining bright. He circled the answer, then immediately moved on. Upon completing the exam, a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion swept over him. He had pushed through the thick fog of uncertainty, relying on newfound confidence, and it invigorated him. Outside the exam room, he met Rosa again. The look in her eyes said it all. Pride, but also an understanding of the journey it took to reach this milestone. "You made it through," she said, her voice warm. "How do you feel?" "Surprisingly good. Maybe it was the perspective shift. I was able to confront my fears instead of shying away from them." That's key. The moment you accept your feelings without letting them consume you, real growth happens. Ethan nodded, reflecting back on the strength he had discovered, not only in tackling equations, but in understanding himself. A door had opened, yet he sensed another challenge waiting on the horizon. As he integrated back into day-to-day life, confidence resonated within him. However, his attention turned to what lay ahead. The next big test was not academic, but a very real confrontation with those classmates' preconceived notions about him. They saw him as the underdog, the one to be doubted and derided. But what if he transformed theirs?
Expectations? During lunch the next day, he spotted the group that had once loomed so large in his mind. This instinctual tide of apprehension washed over him, but there was something else, a burgeoning determination to not let their past judgments define his future interaction. Refusing to allow fear to dictate his actions, Ethan approached their table. "Hey, could we talk about what happened during the exams? I think it would really benefit us if I shared some of my strategies. They know we all want to succeed." The surprised silence hung heavy for a moment. Then, one of his former critics scoffed, but another one countered, "Actually, that's not a bad idea." Ethan could feel the weight of that critical gaze on him. Yet beneath it lay the potential, an opportunity to reshape perceptions through dialogue. "Why not?" he pressed, steeling himself for whatever came next, ready to turn their skepticism into conversation. But could he truly shift their perspective? What if he inspired the very change he sought to see? Or would the ghosts of his past come back to haunt him in this vulnerable space? The risk hung uncomfortably in the air as he waited for their reaction, seeking to understand which path his new journey would take. Ethan leaned against the table, his palms clammy yet resolute, as the murmurs from the group cascaded over him. The blend of skepticism and curiosity radiating from their faces was a crucial moment. He could feel the tension binding their readiness, or to dismiss him altogether. This was the point of no return. As the silence stretched, Ethan made a deliberate choice. He wasn't there to beg for their attention or permission. He was there to assert his growth. "I know I wasn't the strongest student before, and yeah, I've made mistakes," he started, trying to project a calmness he didn't fully feel. "But I found ways to tackle the exam that helped me succeed this time. I think it could work for you too." The eyes that had once looked past him now hovered over him, searching, examining. A part of him wanted to retreat, to find solace in the shadows where his insecurities had always dwelt, but he held his ground. "Let's break a problem down together," he suggested, hoping to ignite collaborative interest rather than hostility. A girl from the group, surprisingly, smiled slightly. "Okay, show us what you've got." There it was, the fragile opening, like a crack in a door that threatened to swing wide with the right push. Ethan took a deep breath and turned to the simple algebraic expression he had practiced diligently before the exam. He explained each step, revealing the logic behind his thought process. At first, their faces mirrored confusion, but slowly, a couple of nods punctuated the air when they began to grasp the concept. It was not just the explanation of numbers that mattered. It was his dedication to articulate his understanding clearly. "See," he added, emboldened by their growing interest. "It's just about changing how you look at the problem. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to start." They erupted into a flurry of questions, some wanting to clarify points, others diving into different problems altogether. It was exhilarating. The exchange transformed the once persecutors into peers. For the first time since he had engaged with them, he felt like an equal participant in the academic arena rather than an outcast. Yet, as he thrived on the camaraderie forming around the table, a nagging doubt lingered. Could this be sustained? Would the acceptance he was experiencing be temporary, or was it a genuine shift in their perception? Ethan realized he needed to remain vigilant. This moment wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about affirming to himself that he belonged. As the lunch period dwindled, Ethan laid out a couple of study tips, culminating in a shared commitment to collaborate as they prepared for the upcoming tests. This was uncharted territory, a blend of vulnerability and empowerment, and he wasn't sure if he was brave enough to navigate it. Later, as he walked home that day, Ethan's thoughts tumbled over each other. Facing his classmates had thrust him into a new reality, one shaped by connection, interaction, and mutual respect. The anxiety that had marked his academic journey began to peel away, revealing a desire to engage even more deeply. However, just as the sun dipped low, casting shadows longer than ever, he wondered if he could maintain this newfound growth. Would it withstand the trials waiting just around the corner? Ethan's heart raced again. What if his past fears resurfaced when faced with these classmates in larger settings or when competition flared? The horizon loomed darker than it had moments before. He was poised on the edge of transformation, but the question persisted. Could he sustain such courage amid future challenges? And with that uncertainty settling heavy in his chest, one thought crystallized. The true test of his metamorphosis lay further ahead, awaiting his next daring move. Ethan awoke the next day feeling an unfamiliar energy coursing through him, an echo of the empowerment he had tasted the day before. Each step towards school felt different, as if he were a new version of himself, eager but slightly anxious to demonstrate this evolution to those who had once made him feel small. He replayed his triumph in his head, but alongside it brewed a question. Would he be able to recreate that success? Upon arriving, the familiar scent of the school corridors, mixed with the cautious anticipation in the air, set his heart racing. Approaching the classroom, Ethan could hear the usual banter, but was determined to inject his newfound confidence into the environment. He glanced around, seeking those who had shown interest in his equations yesterday. They were gathered in a circle, brainstorming difficult problems, their same faces now reflecting a community of inquiry. "Hey, can I join in?" Ethan called out. To his relief, the girl from the previous day smiled and waved him over. "Of course, we were just trying to figure this one out." She gestured to the whiteboard, where a particularly tricky problem awaited. Ethan settled in, ready to use his previous day's strategies. Yet, as he examined the problem, doubt slithered into his mind. What if he couldn't remember the steps? What if he floundered in front of them? He had thrived with their curiosity yesterday, but was it an anomaly, a fleeting glimpse of success? Pushing back the wave of doubt, he looked at the group and took a deep breath. "Let's break it down together, just like we did yesterday," he began, the words rolling off his tongue more confidently this time. As he articulated his thought process, he felt a growing synergy around him. He was no longer the sole navigator of the discussion, but rather a trusted guide. "Exactly. So if we isolate the variables," he continued, hearing their responses, words of encouragement, sharp insights, and thoughtful critiques. Each contribution bolstered his courage, knitting a new tapestry of collaboration that felt far more enriching than anything he had anticipated. A small victory surged through him as they collectively worked through multiple problems. Ethan was swept up in a rhythm, recalling the very techniques that had propelled him in his last exam, even adding his own personal touches as they tackled each challenge. And then it hit him. This synergy wasn't just about solving math problems. It was about shared growth, mutual respect, and genuine connection. Just when the air felt electrified with newfound camaraderie, the principal's voice boomed over the intercom, announcing that a significant math competition was scheduled for next week. A competitive edge fluttered in the room as students began discussing strategies, their excitement palpable. Yet, as the current of exhilaration surged through the group, a familiar sense of unease crept into Ethan's consciousness. Competitions were daunting. They resurrected memories of failure. What if he struggled under the same pressure? His heart raced with the thought of standing against not just his peers, but also against his own self-doubt. However, there was a flicker of accountability as well. "What if we prepare together?" he suggested impulsively, rallying the group around him. "Let's form study sessions where we go through the material. We can help each other." The immediate buoyant responses swelled his spirits. He was forging alliances, transforming perceived threats into opportunities for deeper connection. Though the stakes of the competition loomed, Ethan began to feel that solitude might not be his destiny after all. But doubt remaining gnawed at the edges of his confidence. The true challenge was yet to come. What would happen when they faced the competition together? Would he falter when the pressure surged, or could this growing camaraderie steer him towards sustainable success? As he walked away from the buzz of conversation, the shadow of anticipation lingered behind him, darker than before. The competition would not merely test his mathematical prowess, it would assess the very core of his newly emerging identity. Determined yet trepidatious, Ethan steeled himself internally, aware that the next few days could either solidify his transformation or unravel it, all depending on how he embraced the challenges ahead. Ethan's week unfolded with an intensity that both invigorated and overwhelmed him. Each afternoon, the study group grew tighter, their discussions more profound. They submerged themselves in practice problems, unraveling tricky equations, digging into complex theory, and illuminating how the material connected in unforeseen ways. Ethan had become a focal point among his peers, his explanations often sparking new insights, but as the competition edged closer, the cracks in his newfound confidence began to show. Even amid the vibrant camaraderie, whispers of self-doubt resumed their insistent drumming in his mind. Could he still hold the weight of their expectations? The competition's looming date brought a chilling reminder of past failures, reinforcing an anxiety that had begun to surface. Although they prepared intensively, Ethan often found himself second-guessing his abilities late at night, pacing in his room, replaying imagined scenarios where he stumbled over his words or lost a crucial point due to nerves. One day, as they honed strategies in the library, Ethan felt the burden of silence as the group pondered a particularly challenging theorem. The clock ticked in a steady rhythm, amplifying the discomfort. Frustrated, he challenged himself to vocalize his thoughts. "Okay, let's approach this like we're teaching it to someone who has no idea what's going on." The suggestion met with nodding heads. As he explained the theorem, something shifted. The murmurs around him faded, replaced by intent expressions. The realization struck him. He thrived when others relied on him. This wasn't simply a mentally taxing exercise. It was a platform wherein he could share knowledge. With each interaction, he felt the fear retreat. But even in that breakthrough moment, a slice of trepidation split through him. What if he stumbled during the competition? His heart raced at the thought of him failing to deliver under pressure. The notion settled heavily on his shoulders, mixing dread with exhilaration. That night, a restless energy drove him to the old family workshop, where dusty shelves housed remnants of his childhood experiments. Upon seeing his cluttered desk, an urgent wave of clarity struck him. He began organizing the scattered notes and textbooks, his surroundings transforming into a curated snapshot of accomplishment. As he sifted through materials, he stumbled upon an old math puzzle book. A spark of nostalgia ignited a rush of motivation. Why not reinvent the problem-solving method, he mumbled to himself, driven by a yearning to reclaim that spark of confidence he had felt earlier in the week. This pursuit of innovation was new ground. It required a willingness to challenge not just his knowledge, but also his approach towards competition. He crafted a pressure handbook filled with strategies that resonated with him. Breathing techniques, positive affirmations, and tactical approaches to manage time during exams. Each page became a reflection of his evolving personal philosophy, a blend of mathematics and mindset. In the days leading to the competition, he shared snippets from his handbook with the group, encouraging them to cultivate their own strategies. The dynamic shifted again, reaffirming a deeper connection that extended beyond problem-solving. They were forming an environment where vulnerability and aspiration merged, fostering resilience in a way Ethan hadn't expected. As the competition day dawned, the familiar energy, the electric feel of awakening potential, buzzed within him again, but uniquely. He was as prepared as he could be, not only with his math skills, but with his mindset. A duality of excitement and anxiety flooded through him. Could he balance these competing emotions? The moment finally arrived, leaving Ethan standing before an auditorium of peers, some facing similar apprehensions. The moderator announced the start of the competition, and as the papers were distributed, Ethan felt the eyes of his group settle on him. An entire universe of shared stakes, expectations, and faith rested on his shoulders. But hidden beneath the surface lay another question. How much of himself was he prepared to discover in the heat of this moment? With a determined breath, he picked up his pen, knowing that this wasn't just a test of mathematics, but an unveiling of the person he could finally become. The sound of a ringing bell echoed in the vast room, ringing louder in Ethan's mind than just a signal to begin. It was a call to face his deepest fears, leaving him at the precipice of a transformation he had only begun to fathom. Would he be ready to step forward when the moment counted? Ethan sat at his desk, the competition paper before him, but it was different this time. No longer was it simply an exam demanding answers to complex equations. It served as a canvas for his transformation. As he scanned the first question, a reassuring calm washed over him. He had deliberately prepared for this moment, not just academically, but emotionally. "I can do this," he whispered under his breath, letting his fingers hover over the pen in his hand. The cacophony of doubt that once clouded his thoughts now felt like a distant echo. With each calculation, he reflected not just on numbers, but on how far he had come. From a privileged son weighed down by fear to a young man ready to seize his potential. He attacked the paper methodically, each solved problem a badge of accomplishment, each successful calculation affirming his resolve. The fear of failure felt like a spark rather than a consuming flame. This was a stark contrast to the tightness he had felt before. The pressure that had once been a cloak of suffocating anxiety now cocooned him, a reminder of the support he had cultivated alongside Rosa and his peers. Halfway through the competition, a particular question emerged, one designed to trip up even the most seasoned students. The initial wave of panic threatened to resurface, but Ethan summoned the techniques he had meticulously crafted in his handbook, a toolkit designed to navigate not just academic challenges, but emotional hurdles. Taking a deep breath, he shook off the noise and focused. He imagined Rosa's encouraging words, "You're more capable than you know," echoing through his mind, infusing him with renewed vigor. With steady determination, he broke down the problem, visualizing it piece by piece. The solution slowly crystallized, and as he completed his answer, a surge of triumph coursed through him. He had done it. The authority over this moment lay in his hands, not dictated by expectations of others, but by his own belief in himself. After the final question, the timer buzzed. Ethan released a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. As he laid his pen down, a monumental weight lifted. He felt accomplished, free from the shackles of what he thought he had to be and who he truly was becoming. He had faced not only the math, but a deeper identity that had long been obscured by gilded expectations. The sense of fulfillment that enveloped him was profound. As he exited the auditorium, the murmur of fellow competitors greeted him, faces that mirrored his own mixture of anxiety and anticipation. In that moment, he didn't think of accolades or scores, but rather the journey, how it had been threaded with growth and self-discovery. It was the conversations with Rosa, the late-night study sessions, the courage to face his classmates, and ultimately, the decision to embrace vulnerability that had drawn him into this reality. Moments later, Ethan spotted Rosa across the hallway, her eyes sparkling with pride as she saw him. He approached, the rush of butterflies in his stomach now replaced by a deep-seated confidence. "We did it," he said, grinning ear to ear, aware that she had been there every step of the way. "You did it," she affirmed, gesturing to him with pride. "You navigated this journey with integrity, and I can't wait to see where you take it next." Those words struck a chord within him. He realized that he hadn't just accomplished passing tests, he had vanquished the flimsy definitions of success that once dictated his life. With each equation, he had become more than his father's legacy. He had crafted his unique identity. In the days that followed, as the results were posted, a calm confidence enveloped him. His score surpassed all expectations, standing as a testament to hard work and transformation. Yet, beyond the numerical success, a significant change had transpired within him. He had fostered the strength to define what it meant to belong. The whispered doubts faded as he interacted more confidently with peers, bridging gaps instead of walls. His next challenge lay in harnessing this newfound assertiveness. With a spirit emboldened by growth, he decided to organize an after-school math club, inviting students, including those who had once belittled him. Here, they could collaborate without judgment, learning from one another as they embraced their shared journey. By nurturing this community, Ethan not only solidified his achievements, but transformed his relationship with both his peers and himself. He knew that the essence of his journey was not the singular act of overcoming challenges, but rather in how he would continue to rise, wherever his path led him. As he fully embraced his potential, Ethan felt a clear path emerging, a future where he could influence others from a place of understanding and empathy, not entitlement. This was his moment of realization. He was no longer just Ethan, the billionaire's son, but Ethan, the capable young man who had conquered not just tests, but the fear that once held him hostage. Ultimately, Ethan had reshaped his narrative. He had not only mastered mathematics, but also the complex equations of self-worth and identity. And as he stepped forward into this new chapter, he carried with him a profound lesson. Success was never about the weight of others' expectations, but about the courage to embrace one's own potential. Now, as you reflect on Ethan's journey, consider your own opportunities for overcoming challenges. You need to subscribe now to this channel for more inspiring stories of transformation, understanding that every view counts in shaping the message. Leave a like now to show your support and help propel these narratives further into the world. Comment below your thoughts and theories about Ethan's journey. Share your insights. And don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need a dose of encouragement and inspiration. Let's champion the journey of personal triumph together.